start recording. Cool, and I can share my screen and we can get started here. Well, let's see, so any new faces? I don't think I saw any new faces there. I feel like I recognize everyone here, okay. So then that brings us to the outstanding project level RFCs. There are quite a few open PRs. I feel like 10 open PRs is kind of like a record for this repo. But starting at the bottom here, we've got this RFC for bill of materials work.
I just read through this again. I feel really good about the content, but I had one question, which is we sort of have like a different schema for how we're having the packages sort of in the stack bill of material versus the bill of material generated by the Buildpacks. And I feel like there's a lot of good reasons we may want to combine those into to use the same schema, because I think eventually they should be united into a single bill of materials by the CNB project. I know we may choose to fill out certain fields in different ones versus others, but I think getting them in the same schema gives us more flexibility and allows upstream tools to more easily consume this data in an automated fashion because they don't have to parse two different formats. I was wondering if anyone had thoughts about that.
So I guess my question would be, would it be okay if we just standardized everything on that schema and essentially added anything that was missing currently, and then almost everything is an optional field at that point as long as it conforms to that schema?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like in my mind what this RFC needs is a schema more than it needs a set of rules. Like we could even take the rules into the project guidelines. I'm more concerned about a consistent schema than delineating exactly in every case what needs to be filled out.
I think that's reasonable and probably makes sense. I think that what's really difficult right now is that the bill of materials that's generated by CNB doesn't actually contain any of the stack information that we put on there, because we've kind of done it in an ad hoc manner. So maybe we need to work something up the chain that is like, hey, if you have, tags of a certain name for your stacks, you should include that in the bill of materials.
Yeah, I 100% think that CNB itself should combine the stack bill of materials with the Buildpack bill of materials into a single bill of materials. So in some ways I'm optimizing for a feature that doesn't exist in CNB, saying they should be the same schema, but I believe that feature should exist in CNB and we should push it through. And I think there's still value in using the same schema even when it doesn't exist, because integrations could use the same source path to parse it, and then maybe life gets easier when it's a single thing later, but it's still easier now than it would be with two different schemas.
Definitely. And I think with that as well, OS level packages are a super well-defined thing in existing software bill of materials schema, so it would not be too hard to, I think, make that migration.
Yeah, because I know that some people have already built tools that process the bill of materials, right? So they could use those same tools to process this if they would like. What's sad is that our bill of materials schema, the schema we should standardize on, where like everything other than name is in metadata, it's kind of a stupid custom schema, but I think that's just what we do for now until Sam's RFC to make everything make more sense goes through and gets implemented in the life cycle.
Yeah, in the last upstream working group, we were discussing separating. So like we originally planned on combining like the restructure of where the SBOM goes with the schema itself, but we planned on separating those two out as different RFCs, since we had questions like this, like if you have an SBOM from the stack, how do you update the final SBOM of the image when you do a rebase operation, for example? So this is definitely on our mind, and I think the sibling RFC to that SBOM structure RFC would probably should ideally propose how to handle like combining SBOMs from stack with the SBOMs.
There are some other hairy upstream questions I have, like if we have a bill of materials, then we now need to also make sure that we're tagging the build image that could be different from the run image in the stack, and doing all of that as well. So I think that's like a whole new mechanism we have to add at that point. But that's I think that goes outside this.
Yeah, I didn't 100% follow that. I think the bill of materials is more important for the run image, but there's no reason not to just stick it on the build image too while we're at it.
Sure, it's just that we currently support a bill of materials and a run bill of materials inside of C&B. So if we wanted to keep that construct as well.
Yeah, we'd probably want to take the build label and combine that into the bill of materials and the run label and do that there, right?
Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, I would agree. So any alignment on a singular schema to cover all of the things would be really great.
Yeah, well, I'll take a look. I think that there's a fair amount of overlap already. And we'll take a look from there.
Cool. Anything else on this front? All right. Next up is the IBM Liberty Buildpack RFC.
I was ready to approve this. I just have one final question about exactly what was meant by the detection criteria that I added to the.
I saw your comment, Emily, and I just commented what you said and merged that change in.
Okay, great. I think this is good to go then.
Okay. One other comment I wanna make is I changed the proposed high-level Buildpack name from Java IBM to Java Liberty. The Open Liberty folks didn't like the IBM name attached to it because we have customers who only want open source, and they see the name IBM, they're going to assume it's an IBM product, and we want to try to not say this is an IBM product, since we're trying to make it all open source, completely. So I removed or tried to remove every place where it said IBM Open Liberty to just Open Liberty. So yeah,
that makes sense to me. Yeah.
So I'm probably going to change the title of the RFC, take out IBM. So the only connection to IBM is just going to be me, just because I happen to work for IBM.
So we're going to call it Java Liberty, which makes sense because they can do WebSphere Liberty or Open Liberty.
Yep. That's all I had.
The only thing I had a question about was, Emily, I know there's a conversation about like who owns or who will be like contributing and maintaining to this as far as like that responsibility. Is that, did I miss, is that outlined somewhere here in this RFC, or do we want to make sure that that is outlined somewhere here?
It's not outlined. I don't know how you guys typically handle contributions. I would like to be involved in maintaining the Buildpack and essentially owning it if I could, or other people on my team.
Awesome. I think that is also what we would like to to pull this into, I think, starting in Paketo community and then bring you in as a maintainer of the sub team in that repo that would be responsible for taking care of this build pack.
Okay. Great.
But we should probably, to Ryan's point, I think Ryan's right that we should outline that in the RFC.
Okay, I'll add it.
And normally this just is something we'd include in the implementation section, just saying, here's the team that owns it and like where the repo is going to go and that kind of thing.
Okay.
I'll leave. I just want to make sure that happened. I'll leave Emily to like actually decide that looks right.
I might have to follow up with you, Ryan, on just some questions, some mechanical questions. Because I've been mostly involved with the Java build packs. I don't think we've had something come through the community repo yet. So just like, is the team structure mirrored there? That's in Paketo, I assume it is, but maybe our team isn't. Like, we might need to do some groundwork to have a team that is the right one to assign it to.
Yeah, I'm happy to help with the technical side. It is mirrored, but only for those teams that have stuff that's in community. And I don't think Java has anything in community at the moment. So that I don't think there is a mirror team on that side, but I can help you with like setting any of that up. Okay, awesome. Anything else on this?
I don't have anything.
Cool. Next up is this reloadable process types RFC. I don't think Paul is here today. I saw there was from Frankie this comment here that was about basically the trade-offs of this kind of design of a build pack hot reloading functionality, in that like you've got, roughly speaking, two different types of applications you could be building, stuff that is compiled or need to build an artifact, and then others that are like, say, dynamic languages like Node, where you can just include a new version of a file and restart the process and your application is updated effectively. The implementation of the RFC that's suggested is works much better for that latter case, where you're just replacing files for like dynamically typed languages that just reread the file and start running again, versus those that are compiled. And Frankie had some concerns about things like, imagine for say the Go build pack, you are running inside of a Linux container, but you're building on your Mac or Windows machine, and you then build for the wrong OS and sync your wrongly compiled binary into the container, and then obviously that won't end up running and will then create issue reports on our end that some functionality in the build pack isn't working the way that it's expected to. I think it's a reasonable trade-off. I'm not suggesting that it's something that we should discount the RFC for, but I would like to see something in the RFC that like outlines that like this is kind of a trade-off, and like here's how we plan to like mitigate this type of thing. In addition to the fact that I think there are hopefully future efforts that are like at the upstream for like the life cycle to handle some more of this kind of work, but that's like a much bigger effort. So I think like just outlining that like there are trade-offs to this RFC, and also like we want, this isn't the end game for what it means to have like hot reload support in build packs.
I think that was all well stated. There's a lot left as an exercise to the user here to get this working correctly. And that is an exercise the user could do wrong. And I think it's not a reason not to do it. We should just acknowledge that that's what we're doing. Have you, Ryan, left that request explicitly in a comment for Paul, given that he's not at these meetings?
I think I said something similar here. I think at the end I say, Paul, do you think it would be appropriate to include a bit about some of these trade-offs in the design of the RFC? That's basically just what I want to see is like description of the trade-offs and like where we might go in the future, so that like anyone reading the RFC or understanding the functionality understands that like this won't work perfectly for every use case, and that we are intending to like make future efforts to improve this. So I think it's covered. Did anyone else have anything else on this RFC that wasn't what I just mentioned? Doesn't sound like it. Okay. Let's see. This next one up here was opened. I think it's the first time we're reviewing it, if I'm not wrong. I think the thing that I pointed out is that this probably doesn't need to be a top-level RFC, and instead could just be an RFC that's for the dependency subteam. So I think I talked to Forrest, who's working with Sophie, who opened this RFC, and I think, Forrest, correct me if I'm wrong, we'll just end up moving it, right? And it can be addressed elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm totally happy with just moving it.
Okay.
We're
That
going to
being
find
said-
ourselves saying that a couple times today. I think there are
Yeah.
a couple RFCs in this queue that could be sub-team RFCs now that we've made that process a bit smoother.
Yeah. And we're in like kind of a hybrid situation of like some of the stuff has moved and some of it hasn't. And but yeah, for folks that are interested, this one mostly is just about the dependency server, which has some APIs that let you get a bunch of information about the dependencies that Paketo itself is packaging. The RFC is to add this new licenses field, which will be helpful when populating the actual Buildpack bill of materials with license information. So if you are interested, check out the RFC. It'll just be in the getting moved to a different directory at this point. Anything else on this? Okay. And we've got a couple here. Add Microsoft Open JDK and add Alibaba's Dragonwell Open JDK. I'll bucket these together.
Unfortunately, Dan's on vacation this week, but I think I can summarize, even though I've only read one of them. And the point is new JVMs. We should have them. And I tend to agree, especially for Microsoft OpenJDK, which I think a lot of people are going to want to switch from Zulu to Microsoft OpenJDK now that this is the thing.
Is this one of the cases that this should just be moved to like the Java subteam for discussion?
Yeah, I think I already left that in a comment at the bottom of this. I think this is
Awesome.
a Java subteam RFC.
Fantastic. Yeah, and then there's just the same thing for a different implementation as Alibaba Dragonwell implementation. Okay, anything else on these two? Okay. Yeah, a couple more of Dan's proposals here. Proposal for a UPX build pack. I took a brief read through this one this morning, and the short summary is that UPX is this tool that basically rewrites your binary files so that they can be compressed into like a smaller file. The idea generally being it like gzips everything, and then it has at the very beginning of the executable some code that allows you to like in memory unarchive the file and then execute it from that point. I don't think I had any sort of concern or protest against including a build pack that adds this. I think I just said, and I had talked to Dan previously, that we'd had kind of like a mixed experience with using UPX in general. That for our Go binaries, we'd actually used it in the build packs themselves to like compress the actual build and detect executables themselves. and that for some of our build packs, UPX ended up producing executables that would segfault. And so we just kind of had not the most reliable experience in getting that to actually function in a way that was safe. But when it did work, it worked really well. So I don't know, there's like some trade-offs to be made there.
We did this on Java for a while, and we were really happy because the builder was much smaller and it didn't seem like it really affected the startup time, which you would think would be the trade-off for compressing your binary. The problem was it seg-faulted when you're running on an M1 Mac using Docker Desktop, but you're running a ARM VM, but it's emulating an AMD container. There's like a bug in QEMU that causes, for some reason, binaries that are compressed this way to segfault. So we actually uncompressed all of our build packs, and this is very sad. But I do think that it is worth having this functionality available for end users who wouldn't be running an environment like that. We've heard a lot from the Spring Native folks that this would be very desirable to them. And hopefully someday the bug in QEMU will be fixed and we could UPX all the things.
Yeah, and I never got to the bottom for our segfaulting issue. It predates the M1 introduction. We started seeing issues like more than a year ago at this point now. And unfortunately, GitHub Actions only records like 90 days worth of action logs. So I couldn't go back and figure out like when it was that we were seeing issues. But yeah, we basically were seeing them in our release process when we were actually building the release artifact and then running a set of integration tests against it. The integration tests would just fail across the board because we were just getting immediate seg faults from the build pack during detection, which is kind of unfortunate. And that was on like, I don't know, whatever Azure VMs GitHub Actions uses, which is, I don't know, probably not something terribly exotic.
Like maybe it's an ARM emulating an AMD, but it seems unlikely.
Probably not. Yeah, I would guess it's probably like, yeah, some Intel x84 architecture or something. Anyway, I still think it's something that should be available for end users. I think that makes a lot of sense, and folks' mileage may vary in comparison to what we were experiencing. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff or want to try it out, you should look at this RFC and comment.
I only took a quick look at the RFC, but does the downstream build pack have to like decompress it explicitly in the start command, or is it like the UPX package itself knows to do that stuff?
Yeah, they basically write some like executable code at the front of the compressed binary that says like load all this into memory using decompression, like decompress all of this into memory. So then when you end up with the actual executable in memory, it's like the full sized thing. And then it just starts to like basically execs to that other process.
But we know that it wouldn't really need any kind of shared libraries or something on their run image, right? To run?
No,
okay.
It's supposed to be fully self-contained.
Cool.
All right. Next up is this proposal to add libz to the tiny runtime image. I vaguely remember this conversation happening last summer or maybe earlier than that.
We brought it up a while ago on when I was doing the Java stuff, actually, because we want Java build packs to run on the tiny run image. I think that priority fell behind other things, but it's finally coming back to the surface. And if we add this one library, Java could run on tiny.
Did we not add it and then remove it?
That's what I thought happened.
I think, if I'm like remembering correctly, I think Ben convinced y'all to add it because we definitely wanted Java native images to run on tiny and they need libz. but then a new option appeared in the compiler where you could statically compile in libc, so it wasn't important that it was in the run image anymore. It only had to be in the build image. But it turns out that this is not just a Java native image concern. This is the only dependency that's missing for allowing the JVM itself to execute on Tiny.
Okay. I don't know, Emily, maybe if you've already gotten ahead of me, but so like I would have suggested that we just move this under the Stacks subteam and
I was
ask
gonna
the Stacks
suggest that.
folks to, okay.
That too. I was rushing through the end of my
Carried
reviews. I
away.
did not finish them all.
Yeah.
I was like, libc, yes.
Yeah, I mean, would get behind it as well. I just don't think it's our place to make that decision. I think the Stacks folks are the ones who really will end up owning it. So, okay. The last two things here are not RFCs. These are just, I guess, folks who might be on the Node.js or Python maintainer teams. You've got some RFCs in this repo that you can merge. That might help.
I had one really nitpicky question. I don't care too much about the answer to it, but we sort of wrote out in the README when we were describing this that we would have a sub team and then like a flat list under the sub team. And I see that these are nested under sort of component build packs as well. Did we want to flatten them out, or do we just want to leave that as an exercise to each sub team?
I'd like it flattened out, but I think the RFC said you would make a repository. I mean, you would make a directory with the same name as the repository it currently exists. That's why I did that.
Oh, did the RFC say that? I think I put something different in the README, so that might be my fault.
Oh, I will check on it.
Yeah.
I don't think this is something that all the subteams have to agree on. I would be
Yeah, maybe
perfectly
it doesn't
happy to
matter.
be like, there are these subteam directories and the directory structure under there is like
It's
the
like, that's your
subteams can
problem.
manage it. Yes.
Yeah.
So if some of them want to do just like a flat structure, fine. If others want to have like subdirectories based on sub build packs, fine.
Yeah, I think my intention when writing that was, here is something I could suggest to make this look as close to as what you want. But honestly, once they're in the subdirectory, the people that have agency over it are the maintainers, and they can do whatever they want.
Okay. Cool. That closes out all of the top level RFC stuff. I think the only thing left on this language specific RFCs one was this whip, the persistent whip that's still here. I assume nothing's happening still on this front for this whip RFC.
No, I could actually just remove the RFC label for now since it's in draft. Otherwise, we're gonna play this game every week. But I plan to adjust that at some point in the near future. I think I just have to reach out to the .NET maintainers once more just to square away what actually needs to be done.
Cool.
We'll probably be able to get, well, maybe keep the segment, but we'll be able to get rid of having to search this because it'll all be open against the other repo. So.
Yeah, that will be great. Okay, and that brings us to the end of the regular agenda. I'm not seeing any new items. Is there anything else that anyone wants to bring up last minute to discuss?
I wanted to follow up on that Stack community pull request thing. I created like in addition to the style guide to add the recommendation. Yeah, this one. Yeah, just wanted to know if people had any thoughts on that or just remind them to review this.
I'd be happy to review this. I'm a newly minted maintainer on the content team, which I think this is like underneath the community repo is underneath. So I'd be happy to review and see about merging it.
My only gripe with this, looking at it right now, is I have had issues in the past moving to a wildcard stack indicator. I tried to do it on, oh God, what build pack? Build plan, build pack, I'd say about a month ago. And I don't know what there's some issue with either the version of the platform the pack is on or something with how I'm doing it. But I cannot figure out how to actually get it to work as it stands right now.
It's
I think there's a
patched
problem in pack.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's on 04, the pull request, which I pointed to you yesterday, which also fixes the build worm, also fixes this. So once we have platform 05 support, we'll get this and the build worm.
Okay, perfect. That's fine.
So one thing, I guess, this is on like the technical front. I think I agree with the premise of the PR. I think on the technical front, we're somewhat blocked in that all of our integration testing and release like workflow processes are all going to use pack to build artifacts and test them and ship them eventually. So we're kind of, from that perspective, blocked on like actually implementing this across the number of build packs we have that could. Do we have a workaround, or do we want to just block on actually implementing this until pack has support for wildcards?
So I think what we can do is, the issue is when you put only a wildcard stack in there and you then try to run it on the Bionic stack, where a pack will throw an error saying that, hey, it does not recognize Bionic as a valid stack ID for the wildcard stack. I think if you put it as just an addition to the stack list, it should continue working with the existing stuff, and it should not, when pack does support it, it should support all stacks. At least that's how I read the spec. I don't know if there's anything specific there where the wildcard stack can not be expressed in, or like when it's present, it cannot be within a list of stacks.
I think there is. I obviously have to buff up on it again. I remember there being like, if this exists, then it's the only build pack that can, or it's the only stack that can be specified, or something along those lines. But I could be wrong.
Okay. If it's that, then we are blocked. If it's not that, then we should just be able to add it to the list of existing stack IDs, and it should just work when pack supports it.
Yeah, I didn't think that there was that requirement in the spec at least, which is
Yeah.
what I've looked at more recently than the RFC. I'm double checking now. It says each stack can either be an ID or can be set to star, which makes it sound like you could have a combination of the two in the list.
All right. I'd love it if somebody tried that out and just commented on this PR to say whether or not it works. That might be helpful.
I think it'll definitely work in pack because pack has no idea what the star stack ID is. So we'll just be like, star, that's not a stack that is relevant to me.
I have an open PR. I can just make the change and let y'all know.
Awesome. Thanks, Forrest. Okay. Anything else here? Cool. Then coming back, this now sounds like it's the end of the agenda. Is there anything else last minute that folks wanted to bring up? Doesn't sound like it. All right. Well, then until next week, I'll see y'all. Bye.